Hi, everyone, and welcome to another Home Tech. I'm Seth Johnson, joined as always by Jason Griffin. Jason, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing great, Seth. How are you?
Good. A long vacation / week for really the both of us, I think, right?
Yeah. We took a rare week off last week. We definitely pride ourselves here at the podcast on trying to get a new show out every week, but sort of a delayed Thanksgiving week off, I suppose. I was out on the East Coast and just traveling home, and had been traveling for quite a while, and just needed that day to catch up. But I'm excited to be back in the saddle here, and a ton of stories lined up here to talk about. Been a busy couple of weeks in the news, so did our best to kind of pare it down and pick out some of the bigger stories here, Seth, that you and I are going to sort of give our thoughts on this week. We do not have a guest lined up, so it'll just be me and you. We are getting back into booking mode, lining up some great guests here for early next year. And also, Seth, I guess, should take this opportunity to promote our show next week. We're going to be doing our annual fireside chat. We've got Mike Wolf and Richard Gunther lined up to join us. Mike, of course, being from I wanted to say the Smart Home Show, but I think he's really more focused on the smart kitchen stuff now that he's doing.
With the Spoon.
Yeah, the Spoon. That's right. And Richard Gunther from Home On. So the three of us, this will be our third annual time getting together to do that, which is hard to believe.
Right. It's hard to believe that. It's hard to be. We've been doing this. We were just talking about this as we got on pretty early. Like, we've been doing this since like 2014. It's hard to believe that we've gone through, 3 fireside chats now, and this will be our 4th. Wow. It's been a heck of a ride with this show. It's pretty amazing that each and every week there's plenty to talk about. And taking a week off, and you got to give us a credit. We did try to thread that needle. You were coming in, and I think I was going out, and
That's
for
right.
travel, and we just couldn't make this, delays and everything. We just couldn't make the schedules line up. So
It was ambitious.
Yep, absolutely. So we hopefully we'll be able to figure out how to work around some upcoming travel that both of us may have coming up beginning of next year, and we'll keep the shows rolling and come. This is 189, man. So 200's right around the corner.
Getting close.
Yep,
that's right. Cool. Well, let's jump in. I think before we hit anything, I want to take a moment, like we typically do, to thank our patrons of the show. These are our supporters that have taken a minute to head over to HomeTech.fm/support, where you can learn a little bit about our Patreon program. It's a way that you can contribute to our efforts here at the Home Tech Podcast for as little as $1 a month. We've got quite a few people on board doing that. It really means a lot to us, and we appreciate it. So again, if you're a fan of the show, if you tune in and you find what we do here to be fun, informative, hopefully both, we would really appreciate it. Head on over to HomeTech.fm/support. And again, you can do that for as little as $1 a month.
Absolutely. I'd echo that thanks as well. Thank everybody for contributing on Patreon. I know that maybe before this show goes out, or right around the time that this goes out, they're doing something interesting about the way that the patronage is collected, maybe, and versus how it's distributed. I really don't know. Got to dig into this more and see exactly what they mean. But I think they'll be notifying all the patrons on December 7th. So as we record, that is tomorrow, Thursday. So check your email boxes and see what that means. What the change means. I don't think if you've already started giving, like, it's going to change very much to you. But be aware that we've had to talk about this before. They had like a big data leak that they fixed. So not often that we have to talk about Patreon, but they are doing something. So just kind of keep an eye on that. And I don't want anybody to have a unexpected surprise if they decide to charge more for some reason. I don't know. I don't think they're going to do that. But just go check it out over at patreon.com. They'll be sending an email out. It says tomorrow. So hopefully everybody will know by the time the show airs what's going on with that. So also want to thank live chat. It looks like we have a first time listener. J.R. Schultz over in the IRC chat room has joined us. So thanks, J.R. happy to have you here and happy to have you listening to the live show.
Yeah, definitely. All right, cool. One other, I don't want to call it housekeeping thing here, but sort of outside of what we normally do in terms of news, we wanted to give a quick shout out. Old friend of mine, actually, I incidentally used to work on this podcast with Nate. It's called the AV Shop Talk podcast, and if you're a fan of the Home Tech Show, definitely go check it out. It's another great technology podcast. A little bit of a different focus. This one would be much more appropriate for the pros in the audience, but really interesting show. I think Nate does a great job with it. He's really carried the torch well there. I helped him start that show years ago and came over here to focus exclusively on home tech a while back, Seth. But he put out a show just recently that, I have to confess my sins here. I have not listened to yet. I'm a little bit behind, but I understand you were a pretty big fan of this particular episode, and we wanted to just mention it very quickly and encourage people to go check it out.
Yeah, it's the latest one. I have to look at the number of it, but he had Bill Brown on, and they talked about what Nate summarizes to being resignation and cynicism that is permeating the AV industry. A couple of points that, high level points. First of all, let's back up. This is AV Shop Talk. It is primarily, I guess, dealer focused. So if you're kind of an end user and you don't really want to know too much about business or how the AV world works in that regards, maybe not the podcast for you. But I listen to it. I've never been involved in like commercial projects like Nate is, and I listen to this just to like understand what he's talking about. Like it's just kind of expands on some of the things that I don't see at all in the industry that I work in, and in things that are just commonplace in the commercial world just do not hit residential at all sometimes. But at the same time, it's good to know what is going on over in commercial, because sometimes you see technologies filter down, like video and audio over IP, that filters down directly into the high-end residential. So it's good to know what's going on over there, and Nate does a great job of keeping you up to date. But this one was kind of like a high level conversation that he had with Bill about kind of the AV commercial dealers not being kind of respected as other trades, and it kind of like hit home because that always happened when I was a residential AV dealer. And also there was a really good conversation that was in there about giving employees agency to spread their wings and fly within a company and teach them the secrets and let them understand, give them the ability to build something, a career out of their, with the skills that they're bringing to the table. And the, how do they, I don't want to misrepresent what they were saying, but it kind of felt like they were saying that sometimes dealers don't want to train their employees because they're scared that they're going to kind of run off and use that knowledge somewhere else. And that's not the attitude they should have. They should be training them to do better at their job and do better for their customers. And regardless of where they end up being employed, I think that's better for the industry, for everyone to kind of take that view. This guy comes in, he's doing a really good job. Let's get him some more training and get him on to the next level, rather than let's keep him into the wiring pooling position that he doesn't want to be in, where he's going to jump ship in 6 to 8 months. So definitely an interesting conversation. And I would definitely recommend, if you're a dealer, commercial or residential, you should be listening to Nate's podcast, because it's a good one.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, let's move on here. We got a picture of the week, Seth. This one is a real gem. We want to thank Chris Gamble, a longtime friend of the show, who posted this over at our private Slack channel, The Hub. And this is an interesting one. It's a little bit I would say almost more challenging than these things typically are to describe verbally, but it is a custom mount for a UniFi access point, a Ubiquiti UniFi access point. So if you've seen one of those, you can sort of envision what that looks like. And it's mounted upside down on this stained oak, looks like a lamp, like a desktop lamp.
It's very hard to describe this.
Whatever you would put on your desk. I'm at a loss for words. I don't know why what the impetus was for this, why somebody would take the time, but other than obviously they probably wanted better Wi-Fi out in their main living space and wanted this to sort of blend in. But go check it out. We'll have it posted up with the show notes at HomeTech.fm/189. You got to go take a quick look at this thing. Pretty unique.
There's so many questions that I have that I just don't understand why. I don't understand why this was made and why it exists. I look at it and I'm like, okay, all right. Okay, it exists. Okay, I'll give it. It's there. Somebody wanted this. And what was the decision to like mount the access point upside down on this thing? Like, I don't understand this. There's so many questions that come from this. Why would this be done? But here it is. It looks beautiful. I gotta say, it looks amazing. But if I was a woodworker in any way, shape, or form, I would do something like this, I suppose. But I just don't understand why this exists. It's one of those things.
The kind of gem that you'll only find in the hub, right?
I guess so.
It was a great share by Chris. So we appreciate that. And again, go check that out. It's a pretty funny image. HomeTech.fm/189 is the place to check that out. A couple of other just fun stories we wanted to touch on here. These are always kind of interesting. This one in particular with the holidays coming up. Jim Beam apparently selling a smart decanter that pours whiskey on command. And Seth, you had this one in our queue for potential topics to talk about this week, and I saw it, and it took nothing more than the headline for me to pull it into the mix.
Did you watch the video? Because that's like the icing on the cake.
It's awesome. Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, so there is evidently this is actually a real product. It's sold out already. Imagine that. It was $34.90, which is an interesting price.
Man, that's cheap.
It's more than a bottle of Jim Beam, but it's a smart device, I suppose. It doesn't really have much smarts in it. If you ask it anything like what the weather is, it just tells you it's time to drink. So, or it would say, how would I know that? Like, and it's got some colorful language. Go watch the video. It's definitely something that I would think would be fake, but it's evidently a real product. So
it is real. It is very real. It says they are sold out, as you mentioned, but they are promising deliveries in time for the holidays. So if you're looking for a fun gift for the whiskey or bourbon lover in your life, again, HomeTech.fm/189. We'll have a link to that, and go check that out. This other kind of fun one that we wanted to touch on, I was actually kind of amazed, Seth, at the amount of places I saw this story pop up. The Furlexa. This guy, apparently, guy or gal, I'm actually not sure, came up with the idea to take a Furby doll, which if you've seen one of those, you know they're kind of what they look like, and turn it into an Amazon Echo. I think you were telling me before the show, Seth, it took him like a year or something to do this. Yeah.
It's definitely a guy. His name is Zach. He's up in Tampa, from what I gleaned from some of the stuff that he has. Actually, this site that I'm going to get off on a side tangent, but this how-to site that this is hosted on has a bunch of interesting like how-to things posted on it. So it was like getting on Wikipedia. It's always dangerous for me. I click one link and then click another, and sooner or later, about 3 hours later, I'm like, man, what the heck? I got to get back to work.
I was supposed to be working on a project.
Yeah. So that be careful when you go to this site, because it's done really well, and there's a bunch of like nice looking pictures and videos and that kind of thing. So be careful when you get involved with looking at this and seeing what he did. But he basically made a custom electronic piece and used the Alexa voice service to provide full Amazon Echo functionality built into the nice little Furby, and he's calling it a Furlexa, which is a great little name for the device. Of course, the eyes and the mouth move when it talks, or when Alexa talks. And he had some interesting challenges with the hardware, that like basically the size of the Furby. and fitting a Raspberry Pi Zero into it, along with an amplifier for the speakers, and making this speaker better, like, because the speaker that came with the Furby is garbage. I mean, there's a lot of different things that he like ran into with challenges. So it took him, like you said, about a year to finish this and put it all together, make it work. But at the end of the day, it works. And he's got this strange little device that he can talk to, and it kind of motorizes and wiggles around. And Jason, this was like back in the 90s, right? Like, this was like the big Christmas gift for kids. Like, I think you and I are probably well beyond the age that would want a Furby, but I remember people wanting them and seeing them.
Oh yeah.
It was like
a
one
craze.
of those. Yeah, it was a craze for a while. So I thought we had seen the last of the Furby, and this is probably saying that we're not. Like, the Furby's here for a long time.
For Alexa. Yeah, pretty funny. Well, good for him. It is a cool site, like you said. I poked around it just for a few minutes. Hadn't heard of it prior. And if you're into tinkering or doing any of these sort of home projects with technology, it's got some cool ideas on there that you can go glean some inspiration from. Shifting gears a little bit to a much more substantial story, I would say, a much more meaty story here. Want to thank Craig Treleven, and I apologize if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly, for sending us a link via email to this story. Really great share. Appreciate him taking the time to reach out from a site called aboveavalon.com, which I have to admit I hadn't heard of prior to him sending this over, but I've added them to my feeds now. Very well written piece about what the author purports to be a mindshare bubble involving stationary smart speakers. So, Echo, Google Home, etc. Like I said, very long piece. This has got to be north of probably 1,500 words or something. So not a quick read, but very well written. Not going to get into all of it here. Would encourage people to go check it out. But I pulled out a quick paragraph here. Probably won't read the whole thing, but I think the first sentence really sums up the overall gist of the piece, where he says, I don't think stationary smart speakers represent the future of computing. Instead, companies are using smart speakers to take advantage of an awkward phase of technology in which there doesn't seem to be any clear direction as to where things are headed. He goes on to say consumers are buying cheap smart speakers powered by digital voice assistants without any strong convictions regarding how such voice assistants should or can be used. He goes on to argue really that this smart speakers are sort of a stopgap in the market. His real direct conclusion is that wearable technology will eventually sort of usurp that functionality in the home. In one part of the article, he points out that having a smartwatch on your wrist that could serve as your voice assistant would effectively accomplish the same thing as like 10 to 15 Echo Dots distributed around a really large house, right? So the practicality argument there. And I don't know if I necessarily see, I don't see smart speakers and wearables in a head-to-head battle per se, but I think his broader point stands, which is that these smart speakers are sort of serving this role of serving up these digital voice assistants that I think will eventually move to a more ubiquitous place, be it wearables or built into appliances in the home or into your car or whatever it is. I think the platform is really what these companies are after, and I think that's the broader point that he's trying to make.
Yeah, there's an interesting. His conclusion is that this will end up in the wearable space, and that may or may not be. I don't know. I think we're thinking about using like a smart watch. That's the easy wearables to think about. But I have a pair of these Apple AirPods here. They are little tiny computers built into headphones. Essentially, they look kind of strange because they don't have any wires on them, but they're a completely wireless system. And they're wearable. I mean, a computer of that size is incredible for an engineering feat to have made, like, at this point in time. And I'm reminded, I'm gonna have to dig up this image because we were talking about this article before we started the show. There's a nice little picture that has side by side the first generation Apple iPhone that everybody, kind of thinks back and says, "Oh, wasn't that a game changer?" It really moved the cell phone market into a different place. And it's side by side next to the current generation Apple Watch. And when you compare them, the specs are almost exactly the same. There's a cellular radio in both. They both have, I think the Apple Watch actually has a better processor inside of it and more RAM than the original iPhone does. And I want to say the screen size is relatively the same, just because the density of the pixels is more on the watch, but I could be wrong on that. But regardless, this is a marketplace that is moving from, in the last, iPhone is 10 years old now because we have the iPhone 10. In 10 years, they've shrunk the size of an incredibly complex computer into the size of something you can wear on your watch and that lasts for 2 days on battery power, doing what it does. So there could be a market for some kind of wearable in the future to replace these things, and having the platform, whether it be Alexa, whether it be Siri, whether it be Google Assistant, on that particular hardware is going to be the tricky part. And there's a ton to take away from this article, right? I mean, you said this a number of times, but I think the bigger thing is, like, if we both have to kind of take a step back and look at it, like, the Amazon Alexa is definitely not the product I see taking over the smart home. Like, it barely works as a smart home control right now. There's so much they have to do to improve this thing as a smart home control. It's just not, it's not what it is. And if you're thinking about using Alexa for a digital assistant, like, I mean, I'm sure there's things you can do. We use it to add things to the shopping list, and we think that's neat. But it doesn't get everything right. And my wife was complaining about this the other day. Like, she rambled off a bunch of stuff to, like, add to the shopping list, and it added everything on one line of the shopping list. And so she had to go in and break those apart, right? Because it doesn't understand that you have multiple things that you want to put on your shopping list. So there's a long way to go still for these things. And this article outlines a couple of interesting points around pricing and this, that, and the other that we really won't go into. But wearables could be, I think wearables are just kind of like a comfortable solution for this, right? I don't know if that's where this technology will end up.
Yeah. I think my main thought is that it'll end up everywhere. It'll end up in your car, in your TV, in your phone, in your speakers, whatever. Like, I just think it's going to be ubiquitous. But, thanks again, Craig, for sending that over. Really interesting read, and we'll include a link to that in the show notes, and go check that out. I think it's a very thought-provoking article. Shifting gears a little bit to a specific product in the category that we wanted to touch on, Google Home now has support for doing two functions at the same time. And so this is a bit of a, I shouldn't say a bit, I think to me this represents a fairly significant story in the sense that, Echo and prior to this Google Home, these platforms required you to really do one command at a time. This was one of the big things that Josh AI, for example, has been able to do for a while, where you as a user can say, turn on the lights, turn on, Christmas music, right? And set the temperature to 72 and I don't know, whatever, start my coffee maker. Like, you could string those all together and the platform would understand that and go execute on it. Whereas with these other platforms, you got to issue a command, wait, issue a second one. So it looks like Google Home does now have the ability to do two at the same time. Obviously, this is going to become the norm in voice control fairly quickly, but I do think it is a significant story to see these companies moving forward with that and developing that technology.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about this before, and I will use the analogy of using a computer today versus using a computer back when you had a DOS command prompt, where you had to know very special incantations to type in, and if you didn't get one of those things right, then it doesn't work. But the GUI that you have today is much more forgiving. You can just click on an icon and it launches the program, and you pick from a menu the incantation that you want to have happen. So we're definitely looking at iteration on the product, and I think it's just one step in many steps that are to come for these types of products, where executing. I mean, this would make my wife happy for sure. Like if you could add more than one thing to a shopping list, that would be great. I would have a Google Home tomorrow. But for the time being, we have to say, Alexa, add green peas to the shopping list. Alexa, add toilet paper to the shopping list. And like you have to wait for her to say, okay, I added it. It's so lame. Like
Yeah.
that seems like it's low hanging fruit to be fixed.
Right. Well, we'll see. I mean, just going back to that article, that's kind of the whole point, is that these stationary smart speakers, as the author calls them, have really gained a lot of mind share. The public's very aware of them. People are excited about them. The tech press, as he calls it, is painting a very rosy picture, and we'll see. I think they do represent a bit of a stopgap, and it'll be really interesting to see how that technology develops. It's been a turning point in voice control over the last year or two, and I think you're right. We're really seeing just the beginning. So moving on, speaking of Google and Amazon, a number of stories came to the forefront this week. And Seth, I got to be honest, I was not actually aware. I don't know if I've just been sleeping under a rock or something, but apparently Google and Amazon are not getting along very well right now. And there's a number of stories about this, I guess what's been an ongoing feud. One of the bigger ones that grabbed a number of headlines is YouTube disappearing from Fire TV. So quoting here from Variety.com, which from what I could tell got the original scoop on this story. It says the conflict between Amazon and Google is escalating. Google once again, by the way, is interesting. I didn't know that they had done it before. But it says Google once again has started to block access to YouTube on Amazon's Echo Show device on Tuesday, and is notifying users of Amazon's Fire TV that they won't be able to access YouTube anymore starting on January 1. Goes on to say in an unusually frank statement, a Google spokesperson squarely blamed Amazon's unwillingness to strike a business deal with Google. So apparently not a lot of love lost between those two companies. And as these things typically go, that'll be at the consumer's expense.
Right. Google has been wanting to sell their Google Chromecast, Google Home, and products on Amazon, and Amazon
got it.
isn't letting them sell them on there. So Google says, well, you won't let us sell our products on your store. We're going to make your products worthless. So there you go. I can't imagine that this is going to stand up for very long, but this is one of those things that's just like baffling that it's happening. But here it is. Here we are. It's happening. I mean, that quote that you said was unusually frank. Like it is like a direct attack and saying, hey, this is why we're doing this. They're not letting us sell this stuff. So, and I guess last month they stopped selling Nest products too, like some of the newer Nest products, because guess what? Amazon has a camera out now. So they're just going to say, okay, well, we're going to take away the services from your users that your products are, leaning heavily on as a selling point. So, very interesting that this is going on. I wonder where this will all end up. And like you said, I think this is all good and well for Amazon and Google, but not good for the customers who, expect to use their Fire TV to watch YouTube. I think that they're the ones that are going to take the hit on this for sure.
Yeah, no, it's unfortunate. I mean, we had another story here, domainwire.com, and I think ties in exactly, Seth, to what you were saying is, consumers buy these things and you get in a rhythm of using them. And this story starts out by describing how, let's see what he says. We have Echo Show. He's talking about Echo Show in our house, and my daughter loves to watch YouTube videos on it. Rather, she did enjoy watching YouTube on it until Google forced Amazon to pull the plug. This story goes on to talk about Amazon, a rumor, we should say. There's no, not a lot of meat to this story, but Amazon reportedly purchasing some domains, I guess, AlexaOpenTube.com, AmazonAlexaTube.com, and AmazonOpenTube.com, right? So these are domains that I don't know, I guess they could go use to compete with YouTube. I I doubt they would. I don't know. I shouldn't say
Those
I
are
doubt.
horrible names. Like
they're terrible. Yeah, they're awful. And I suspect this is just, people buy domains and sit on them all the time. We all do it. But it goes on to say, is Amazon preparing to create its own free and open competitor to YouTube? I kind of doubt it, but I think I don't know. It's there. There you have it, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and as J.R. Schultz is pointing out in the chat room, Amazon doesn't play well with anyone. Apple, for example, still waiting on the Amazon TV app for the Apple TV. Well, guess what, JR? We've got some good news for you. That came out today. Like literally, I woke up this morning, I opened up Twitter, I saw an image. I didn't see anything else, but an image of an Apple TV download screen with the Amazon Prime Video app on it, and I freaked out. I jumped out of bed, ran over to the Apple TV, and was trying to download the thing, but I had to do an update and everything. Like it took what should have taken like 5 minutes, took like 30. But yeah, so now we have Amazon Prime TV on the Apple TV, which is very nice. We've been waiting on this for months now, years. I would say years. Like this has been one of those things like Siri in the can, and that we've been waiting on for Apple for years, and we finally get it. I guess Amazon was the one dragging their feet on this one. And I gotta say, the Amazon didn't play well with Apple at all in the beginning too, because they banned selling Apple TVs on Amazon for quite some time. After the Fire TV came out. So only in the last couple of months were you able to start purchasing Apple TVs again, and sellers were able to add them in and start selling them again on the Amazon.com store. So glad to finally get that. Like I am so excited about that, because what I was doing before was like an animal. I was using the app that's built into the TV and having to like do some funky Control 4 programming to make that pop up. It's just horrible. Like everything
savage.
I know everything is now in one spot. I put the little icon and moved it right up to the top. It's right there.
Yeah, definitely. Very good news. And JR, thanks for the beautiful segue.
Yes, thank you.
There, that was big news, and that came across today. I know some folks I work with at One Vision were posting about it. Christmas came early. It was the joke, and this was 6 months, I think, to the date. Actually, I think I might have read from when they originally sort of announced that they were going to bury the proverbial hatchet and that we'd have this functionality. So we've been waiting, and there you have it, right in time for the holidays. So great deal there as far as I'm concerned.
Before we move on, the AW Raynar is in the chat room saying, sent both of the shows back. Amazon has services, but their software UI is horrible. I will add on to the story that the UI is actually horrible in the Apple TV version of the Amazon Prime Video app. Like it's not very good at all. And of course, they messed up the like swiping gesture. So if you swipe up, your cursor goes up instead of actually doing the natural swipe thing that you're supposed to actually have on the Apple TV on every other menu, driving me insane. So
I think we've had this debate before.
Well, it's fine if it's one way, but don't launch an app and then have it not work that way in that one app just because it's Amazon. Come on, guys, get with it. Like,
I'm not a big not on the natural scrolling thing yet.
Well, evidently Amazon isn't either. Another thing that bugged me, the little menus at the top that like were used like movies or Prime Video or blah, 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 like things at the top. You actually had to go up to them and click on them to select them. Not like every other app where you just kind of like go to it and it changes the interface below. Amazon has a long way to go with their UIs. I mean, not everything is a web store where you buy, I don't know, batteries and books. Like you can do something nice, Amazon. I know you can do it. Ugh.
I don't know. I think they're a little tight on money.
Yeah. Too many rockets.
Yeah. I think I saw a story recently that Bezos cashed out like $1 billion in his stock or something. Like, can you imagine? Just
must be nice. No, and the answer is no, I can't, Jason. I can't.
Yeah, actually, I can't either. That makes two of us. Anyways, moving on here. sort of a pro-facing story, but definitely some, consumer. I would say there should be some consumer excitement around this sort of product for sure. UK-based Damson Audio is the first company to earn Dolby Atmos certification for a compact modular wireless audio system, and this from CE Pro. So they've got an 8-channel S series, includes components of soundbar, subwoofer, rear surrounds, and some upward firing modules that I think they say mount below the soundbar is the plan here. But in any event, a really cool, flexible system that, that's one of the big challenges with Dolby Atmos. I personally am a big fan of the technology. I think it's really cool. I think it is definitely a notable improvement to the viewing experience when you have that immersive sound, in your room. And, the fact that you can now use a smaller modular system to go do it, certainly not going to give you the performance of like a true dedicated pair of in-ceiling speakers and, receiver and all that. Like if you're looking for a very high-end Atmos media or theater room, this is not going to be the solution for you. But if you're looking for a nice retrofit to an existing living room or something, it's definitely worth checking out.
Yeah, and to get the Dolby Atmos certification on this thing says a lot for what Damson had to do to make this work. I think this has got to be the first wireless speaker system I've ever heard of, even attempting to do something like Dolby Atmos, right? Like I can't really think of anything off the top of my head that would match this. Maybe there's something out there.
Yeah.
Let us know. Tweet at us at HomeTech.fm. Let me know if there's something out there, because I definitely want to check this out. It's 800. It says 800 pre-order now for £800, which is roughly $800 these days. You get all of these things, and the system's like modular. These guys went out and they created their own wireless spec, basically called Jetstream, and the Jetstream speakers can basically tell where they are in the room related to each other. Based on the time it takes for the signal to leave one speaker and go to the next one. So they're doing some like time coordinating there. You don't even have to like run one of those little weird beepity boopity sounds that you do on a normal receiver to set it up and get it all balanced out. Like this thing, you take it out of the box, you set it up in front of your TV, plug your HDMI cables into it, and move the speakers around the room where you want them, where they can fit. And this thing will auto calibrate and give you Dolby Atmos to essentially in the room and do all the delays and everything that it needs to do. I think this is great. This is amazing. And for $800, I mean, I have a couple rooms I'd like to put this in, and for it to be 100% wireless, like this is definitely something my wife would like. We've been talking about adding on some. I've talked about a long time with her, with like trying to convince her that we could get 2 Play 1s and add them in, and that way we'd have surround sound. But she doesn't want that. She doesn't want speakers sitting out behind the couch or anything like that. I'd have to get power to them somehow. She don't want to see the cables. This is really a perfect solution for that. For when we do want to sit down and watch a fancy movie with Dolby Atmos sound, I just take the little speakers out of the bookshelf and have them charged and ready to go. They're evidently have battery built into them, so you could just set them on behind you and power them on and watch the movie and then put them away, and you don't see them anymore. So this system looks really, really nice, and I'm hoping when it comes out it does work as they're bragging and saying that it will work. I'm really hoping to hear good things about this.
Yeah, it's a neat system. One of the images they feature fairly prominently is the inputs. It looks like it's got 2 HDMI inputs and then of course an output. So you've got to, if you're thinking through the design of your system and how you might implement this, obviously it's got to be able to pull that Dolby Atmos encoded audio off of the HDMI signals. So as you're thinking about that signal flow and how you're going to wire this thing up, take that into account. The HDMI is going to have to pass through there. Not a big deal, but something to note as far as the design and how you put this sort of thing together. Because again, it's going to have to pull that Atmos signal off of the HDMI somewhere in the chain.
Right. And I'm just kind of skimming through the article here. 19 milliseconds worth of delay between the speakers. And I mentioned about it being modular earlier. It's truly modular. Like you can take the rear surround speakers, put them away, and it turns into a 2.1 surround system, basically.
Right.
You don't have to have the speakers hanging out in the room. It's modular. It's smart enough of a system to kind of adapt to what you have set up and run that way. So smart system. I really like this.
Yep, definitely. Well, last couple of stories here we wanted to touch on for this week related to Crestron. It's been a little while since we talked about what they're right. Been a little while since we talked about them, and an update here. Again, another story from CE Pro that we're citing. Home automation leader Crestron is announcing a slate of new residential products scheduled for early 2018 release, including new motorized shades, 2 remote controls, multiple keypads, ping video control, and then 4K video distribution from DM with HDR. So I think that's the new part of that. Obviously, they've had 4K for a little while, and new solutions doing AV over IP. So a fairly full slate there from Crestron, and still, hanging out and getting the headlines in the residential space. I know there was some back and forth that we had on the show and some speculation in the industry at large about what Crestron's intentions were in residential when they pulled out of Cedia. I think that was a couple of years ago now. But they still appear to be committed to the market, and John Clancy, I've had the opportunity to engage with a couple of times, and definitely strikes me as a very intelligent guy and knows his way around the residential market, and he's at the helm there for Crestron Residential. So, I think overall this is good to see. Crestron definitely not a cheap product. So, the remote, for instance, this new hard button remote, which we'll talk about a little bit, I'm personally a fan of it, but I think it's getting some mixed reviews in terms of just the appearance and design. But I think, Seth, you were saying, and I'm sure it's in this story here, like $800 or something for the hard button one, and then they've got a touchscreen edition that was like $1,000, I think. So, and that's just for the remote, right?
$400.
You're in Crestron world now.
Yeah, you're in Crestron world.
Go ahead.
It's $400 for the hard button remote. $1,000 for the one with the touchscreen. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. So big jump for the touchscreen, but you're going to need a processor to go behind that, and of course a programmer and all of that. So, Crestron's one of those solutions that it's not for every project or every home, but as the professionals who listen to the show are well aware, it does have its place, I believe, in high end, especially residential, where there's a real need for a lot of customization. So overall, interesting, worth a read, especially if you're a pro listening and you want to go check out what Crestron is up to.
Yep, definitely. And buried in there is a little one paragraph, maybe 2 paragraphs, about Crestron opening up Ping for development. They have developed a SDK for manufacturers to develop drivers, which is huge, because right now, before this is developed, you're basically waiting on Crestron to implement drivers within the Ping system. Now manufacturers can get on that, develop drivers for the Ping system, and have them ship along the Crestron hardware. So that's great. That's really, really great for the advancing the Ping system. I really truly believe that Ping is the future of Crestron Residential. Like there's so much that system can do, and I hear that it's getting some pretty good traction in like MDU, where it actually says that here in the article too, but I've heard it elsewhere that Ping can be pretty easy for guys to go in and sell a Ping processor with some shades and a dimmer and have a smart condo, and sell that all the way up the building. And then you basically have an entire building full of Crestron gear that you can go in and, service, add on to, upgrade, and now get, DM controlled with Ping as well. So that's pretty nice. I'm really happy to see and excited to actually see them moving forward with a lot of this stuff. Feels a little late. Feels like a little catch-up work that they're doing here, which is odd saying that with Crestron. But here they are, and they're moving forward. The the prices aren't any cheaper, but at least the products are starting to show up now. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah. Cuts dealer base by 20% too. I don't.
Everybody seems to be doing that, right? Like Control4.
Yeah, don't know what to make of that exactly, but that's right there in the headline. So they're, I guess streamlining. I'm sure they've got a lot of. I think what happens is, integrators will sign up to deal multiple, Crestron, Savant, Control 4, and they really sort of latch onto one, but they want to be able to put all three on the website. Right. So I suspect there's probably an element of just kind of cleanup, probably not much to read into that in terms of the overall company. It's probably just some housekeeping on the sales management side. But Seth, I want to get your opinion. So it's the HR 310 is the hard button remote, and then it's sort of big brother there with the touch screen on top is the TSR 310. And price tag aside, like just the design and the overall look. I know CE Pro did another article related blog here that's linked in the story. 1980s Radio Shack called and they want their remote back.
The image on this article, oh my God, go see this article just to look at the image at the top. Julie's outdone herself with her Photoshop or MS Paint skills that she's slowly developing.
Right. Yeah. So I don't know. What do you think? I personally, I know it's a lot of buttons, right? And the move with remotes in general is to sort of streamline that and reduce the number of hard buttons. But I think these sort of remotes have a place in the smart home, and I don't know. I don't think it's terrible. I think for the right end user, it to me looks like a pretty good product. What do you think?
No, I think it's a pretty good remote. It has its place. $400 is a steep price point for it, but I don't mind it. Like it's one of those things where, sometimes touchscreens are just not the right technology to put in a room. Like simply, you could do everything that you need to with a hard button. And if you have a hard button, you instantly press that hard button. You don't have to wait for the touchscreen to wake up and register your fingerprint. Like you press the hard button and things happen. And, I don't mind. I don't think it's necessarily a step back, but I certainly don't mind the look of the remote. I like some of the things that they've done with it. Where you actually have like, I could have done without the number pad, but whatever, it's there. And it's in a strange place. This is kind of like, I think this is kind of like the old person remote, right? Like it still has a number pad for dialing in channels. Even though channels are up in the 5,000 and 6,000s now on some cable TV providers, here we are with a remote that prominently displays the channel numbers at the top where you can type them in. But I do like that they've had it, like if you can see on the 5 button there, it kind of has a ridge, and same thing with the transport controls down. The pause button has a ridge where you can kind of feel down and actually never even look at this remote to use it, right? You could just sit there and feel it, find out where the 5 button is. And okay, I want to watch 23. Boom, you're watching channel 23.
Right.
I like it. It's all tactile, ding, remote. But I think that I think it definitely would have its place in some certain installations. Maybe even in a boardroom, right? Like this would work in a boardroom.
It's the boardroom certainly, or I was going to say it's the, and I say this because I've worked on these before. It's the bedroom remote for like the guest suite of a 9,000 square foot house in Beverly Hills.
Right. Yep. That's exactly where I would put this. And for $400, who cares, right? Like that's chump change on a job like that.
Yeah, and I'm half joking. I think there are, of course, other applications, but it's generated some conversation about design, and I don't know. I am an unapologetic hard button guy when it comes to the living room and having a remote in your hand. I know it's a lot of buttons, right? You look at the remote and you go, wow, it's a lot of buttons. So that might be my only thing, but it's all right there. There's no flipping through screens or, confused in-laws asking you how the hell to use the remote. It's just there, and it's similar to the remote they've always used. So I think there is something to be said for that.
I didn't even notice this until I was kind of skimming down the bottom of this article where Julie's pointing out the red, green, yellow buttons are all gone on the remote. Like these are just stupid buttons that manufacturers added in because they wanted to have some kind of buttons on the remote, and they would tell you what they meant on the screen. So sometimes you're looking at like the TiVo interface and you see green means press the green button to skip to past the commercials, or you're watching a Blu-ray and you can press those buttons to do something particular. They were just buttons that had no label, but they were colored. And Crestron's done something pretty cool here. They've moved those buttons onto the D-pad. Do you see that? Like they're not present. The 4 buttons aren't present on the remote, but they're moved to the D-pad. So I guess you have to press. There's 2 buttons to get to that. You have to press the little colored button below between exit and last, and then you can use it. I'm not sure. Yeah. So it says it here that you press the wheel, the button, and the white LEDs will temporarily turn to red, green, yellow, and blue. So that's really smart. They have done away with something and actually made it pretty elegant. I like that. So 2 thumbs up for that feature. More companies should do something like that. Stupid buttons.
There you go.
I mean, they're good buttons and they're bad buttons, and those have clearly been bad buttons. Like that's just lazy.
There are good buttons and bad buttons. That's right.
Title.
All right, Seth. Well, that's it for this week. Again, if you're tuned in, we appreciate you listening. Definitely join us next week. Once again, we're going to be doing our annual fireside chat with Mike Wolf and Richard Gunther. We'll be bringing them on to talk about some of the biggest stories and trends that we saw in 2017 and looking forward to 2018 and what we expect to see there. And it's always a ton of fun. I really enjoy that episode every year. This will be our 3rd annual time doing it, so really looking forward to that. Definitely tune in. And once again, if you're a supporter of the show, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. If you're interested in learning more about that, head on over to HomeTech.fm/support.
Absolutely. Well, Jason, I will talk to you next week.
All right. Sounds good, Seth. Take care.